This is another one of those things where people who I think regularly watch the channel will get more than those that don't. But I find that I've encountered a lot of people in the last maybe year or so that don't seem to understand the, for lack of a more wanting term, disillusion I have with the Israeli government. And I would say it's in a state that I think is very similar to the U.S., except it's been there possibly longer, where people do have policy issues with the government, right? But because of who it's represented by, in the case of Israel, Netanyahu, there's oftentimes a set of people who talk more about him than they do the actual issues. So just like over in the U.S., people mistake those who have policy issues with Trump that they had with his predecessor, if it's the same position, right, as having Trump derangement syndrome, or they do that willfully. I don't know what their intent is, but they say that, mischaracterizingly about people who would be just as upset with the Republican for doing it as they would a Democrat. Um, so I just want to clarify that right off the gate. Let me say hello to Envoy, who has was so upset by yesterday's video he started punching his computer screen and probably swearing up a storm to his ex-wife in divorce court. And I hope people understand that's a joke and not serious. But I can only hope. All kind of weird characterizations are going on now. So to kind of put this in a characterization also makes a little more sense. Basically, the way the Israeli government is set up now is that they get to use the Holocaust, right? This event from 70 or 60 years ago. I don't, my math is off at the moment, but they take it, and it's got nothing to do with Netanyahu, other than the fact that it was Jews being, terribly mistreated as human beings, and we can talk about how awful that was until we're blue in the face. But they use this event to sort of, play pity party. I actually had a person who made a really good comparison to kind of what goes on in the U.S., where a lot of times criminals who come from, let's say, a single parent household, right, which we, no one's saying don't have disadvantages and whatnot, but there are some who will actually openly use the fact that they came from this type of environment to justify why they participated in some violent crime. That, again, whether you agree that with me that it has larger impacts on people than those who come from a two-parent one, doesn't by itself, put a weapon in your hand and make you go out and do something evil. So just like how Jews 60 or 70 years ago were definitely mistreated in a complete humanitarian crisis known as the Holocaust, it wouldn't justify any of the evil stuff being done by the Israeli government. Remember, when you talk about problems with Israel, it's always the government. Just like if I say I have problems with America, I'm talking about the government, not the Catholics who live here, not the Christians, not the Jews, not any of these different religious groups. And even if they do get criticized, it's usually speaking about some fact relating to them. Like I would say, okay, you had all these evangelicals vote for Trump, right? And they tell you about how they're pro-life and they love the sanctity of, living and whatnot. Why the hell did they back someone that's bombing babies in the Middle East? Just stuff like that, where it's based on a group of people who are you can actually tie to something that is fact, not just, oh, well, I despise you because you're part of this group. And that's an important note to go with Israel, because they have a weird tendency among their American defenders, people who are affiliated with AIPAC and other groups of that nature that try to sow U.S. Policy in favor of this country, just blind support, right? Not like, okay, we have this idea and we think you'll really like it because yada yada. No. It's the U.S. has historically had a strong relationship with Israel. If you do not back it, you are anti-Semitic. This really lazy way of characterizing people who think critically and for themselves and aren't, bound by whatever historical precedent was. Because unfortunately, all these countries are, including this one, depending on your own political view, I think you would agree, are susceptible to having terrible and good leaders at different points. A country that 10 years ago was okay, 10 years later might be terrible. Just like with Israel, when it had Yitzhak Rabin as its prime minister, let me show the mark. But when he was the prime minister, there were a lot of people who were convinced that the Oslo Accords, which were a peace treaty, or the process of having a peace treaty in this never-ending, conflict between Israel and Palestine, was going to get solved. There was going to be a resolution. This 50-year conflict would finally be over, and then he gets murdered. And it's been literally turmoil ever since then. or you have people come along, and a lot of the reason for that is because Netanyahu has been in positions of power, pulling the strings since that time period. See, as I said before, I'm someone who thinks that term limits are stupid in the sense that I think people should determine, whether how long we have someone in office. That's my position. People are welcome to disagree with it, but in this particular instance, it's literally caused this one person to be able to just stay there and do all these things over an extraneous period that you would never see most American politicians engage in. That's why it's again different. Certainly not the executive level over here, but I guess if you wanted a similar type figure who had like a long-standing big impact on a country and didn't really get talked about that much by most people, I'd say Hoover, the FBI director, who, in the US was able to basically get all this dirt on these different presidents to where none of them ever thought of firing him because of the dirt he had on them, whether it was an extramarital affair, some kind of bribery scandal, all kind of things that he did to ensure the fact that he stayed in power decade after decade after decade. So I make that comparison because it's the closest thing I can think of that aligns with what's being done with Israel with Netanyahu. Let me see. Envoy has a comment, and because I have my computer a little far away, I can't read it. But I'll just go on my phone and read it. We can do it that way. That's our solution. Not a lot of Americans will critique Israel like you do. Well, again, I don't have any kind of affiliation to a foreign government, and unfortunately, a lot of members of Congress, as you've seen with Ilhan Omar, for example, have had the bloody gates rain down on them for saying the slightest thing about Israel. She didn't back the BDS movement, which is the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions group. And to explain that briefly, that's basically businesses in any particular country, right? Not just the US, saying, you know what? You guys kill all these Palestinians for no reason. We will not do business with you. We will not support you. She didn't come out and support that. She just said it's all about the Benjamins, baby, on Twitter. And, half the Democrats and a bunch of the Republicans lost their minds. But that's not because her comments were, some horrible, terrible thing that completely destroyed the sanctity of criticism forever. No, it was the fact that a lot of these politicians who, are influenced by AIPAC and these other pro-Israel groups are paid to have this manufactured outrage. They take small things because seriously, if you think about it, whatever she says, and you can take this any way you want, will never be as bad as what the U.S. has done. It will never be as bad as, for example, in Yemen, again, to bring that up, bombing, what was it, 85,000 children under the age of 5 for 4 years under 2 different presidents from both parties. Never be anywhere near as bad as that. So, they have this manufactured outrage that is a direct result of Israel's stranglehold. And it is a stranglehold. It's not just, oh, we happen to agree with you. It is, you back us, or we call you anti-Semitic and we force you into being on our side. So their stranglehold has made it to where anyone who criticizes Israel in the slightest manner, especially if they're not Jewish, because you saw Sanders during his town hall come out and say he was pro-Israel, but he criticized Netanyahu. Anyone who's not Jewish gets called anti-Semitic by these establishment figures, which is really sad because I've actually, and this is what I was talking about, that most Americans don't care about international issues that don't afflict them. Like if they don't have a family member overseas, they don't care about that particular war. I've seen and spoken to multiple people who back Trump that don't back Israel. That when you tell them, hey, look, this is what they're doing to the Palestinians, they hate it. And they don't like Trump's national security advisor, they don't like his secretary of state. They're really, it's sad that they use the economy and these other social issues to hide the fact that there is a serious problem with the way the U.S. conducts itself abroad as far as bootlicking for this other country, no matter what it does. And that's what my definition of bootlicking, when you support somewhere with no kind of issue at all, like they're some deity or God or whatever. It's almost like a religion to them. People actually will sometimes say that Sharia law, and I completely agree, Sharia law is this horrible doctrine. But we actually, if you think about it, the U.S. has a much more dangerous and violent form of that, because I guarantee you, if Netanyahu or any other high-ranking official in the Israeli government came up to the U.S. and said, hey, can you go bomb whatever type country? Because of Netanyahu's close association with Trump, which stems from the fact that he knew Trump's father, Fred Trump, several decades ago. So they've known each other for a really long time. Trump would probably do it, or at least heavily consider it. And it provided it's one of the ones that's safe. If he goes and bombs Canada, people will freak out. If he bombs Syria, it is what it is. Hey, evil despotic dictator, and we're helping the people there by blowing them to pieces. So it all works out. We still love David, who again I didn't get to see because he left a brief comment and then stopped saying anything. I was so worried and concerned. Yeah, Ruben, I'm really apologetic for last week. I'm trying to make things right. There's actually a comment by this the Iranian foreign minister. His name is Javad Zarif. It was from earlier this year, and he made a term to describe America's, its policy in the Middle East as Netanyahu firsters. And he claimed that even though the U.S. Congress wants to stop blaming Israel for the U.S. support of Saudi Arabia's war in Yemen, this change represents a new stretch even for the Iranian regime. U.S. support for the Saudi-led war in Yemen, the petro-financed Netanyahu firsters. This is his words. And their enablers in the White House will continue with American lives and against U.S. interests to push forever wars. That's absolutely correct. And like I said, the way that these governments have set themselves up is that when you get called un-American and a traitor. So, for example, over here we fearmonger about Iran, right? This country that does nothing to us, that is mortal enemies with Israel. But again, that's not us. They take it and make it to where anytime somebody agrees with something that is pro-Iran or pro-Syria or pro-Russia, because these are countries that have had their problems with Israel, they get called out by these different media figures, and it usually fails because most people don't care about, again, these conflicts, which in this case actually is a benefit because it means that if you're considering somebody for president, they say, oh my God, that person loves Bashar al-Assad in Syria. Most people are gonna say, who the hell is that, and just keep voting for whoever it is that you're warning against or whatnot. I was just making sure, Ruben. I didn't want to, have you get upset and decide to write me a paragraph in the comments section like some other people, which is insane. People just they go out of their mind with this stuff. It's anti-patriotic to refuse pledging allegiance to another country. Yeah, pretty much, Ruben. At this point, that's why I was saying that this is how the U.S. screws itself over, because you put up these weird sort of like, I remember people saying it's un-American to do this, un-American to do that, but at a certain point, it feels like they've tried to weaponize affiliations with places that have nothing to do with us as un-American. Like, if you're not American if you don't back Israel. You're not American if you don't back Saudi Arabia. I mean, like, it's insane to think about. We talk about the cultural overarch of feminization. All these women run for president, all these women run for these different offices. And then Saudi Arabia, they just got the right to drive, like, what, a few years ago? And then, like, you have all these different chicks working for Trump, and they don't have a problem with that. And that should tell you that it was never a concern of theirs how women were treated in countries abroad, how they were persecuted in different places where they literally had no rights, and the U.S. is like the complete polar opposite of that. These kinds of things don't bother them because they're not humanitarians. They don't have a identification with people because they're not on the same soil. So it's all a-okay to them as long as they get their paycheck. So that's part of the reason that gets to go away and just sort of have no one complain and whatnot. David says Americans should care about international affairs because the people they vote for are always involved with other countries, which will, some number from Illinois is calling me. I don't even know any. I do know one person there, but that's not them. I apologize for that. Which will affect us sooner or later. Look at China. Exactly. But this is my point, that basically this has been allowed to fester and go on for two reasons. One is that Americans don't care about international issues. And they're not that informed of historical events. Like, to get why the Israeli relationship is so stupid in the way that it's currently presented is to just say, okay, a horrible thing happened with the Holocaust, right, during World War II, and that's terrible, but I am not involved with that. I wasn't one of Hitler's front men that was doing that horrible stuff. These are my problems with the Israeli government, not an indictment on Jews. and that would be it. And that would make all the critiques and rebukes that people have for you saying, hey, you guys shouldn't, be doing this stuff in, let's say, the Gaza Heights, where you kill all these Palestinians, who, are basically unarmed in comparison with your heavy weaponry. And that would be a simple fix, and it would make most of the people who back and support Israel look really stupid. But they're able to at least appear to be halfway right, because most Americans don't bother to just know those few couple of things about this government. Like they've literally, we've had people who've said that the Israeli government's like way of treating the Palestinians is like a version of apartheid, in what we had in South Africa prior to the Nelson Mandela years. And it was really funny to just think about how people, they look back at it now and they go, oh my God, that was so terrible and evil and horrible, wham. But then you look at it from at what's currently going on, a problem that parallels the other so much, and they have no problem with it. I mean, like I remember, all like when Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize, and they were like, oh man, the wars are going to end because this person who, has lived through the historic oppression of U.S. Racism is going to look at the way we treat people, abroad, and then it just continued because they don't. These American politicians and just a lot of these politicians in general don't have a problem with selling out other people's lives for their own agenda. That's why Reagan ignored the AIDS epidemic. That's why a lot of these U.S. presidents, even the ones I liked, participated in the war on drugs. We can go down the list. Ruben says, pretty ironic that right-wing evangelical Christians support Israel when many of the Arabs that have been killed over there are Christians too. Well, that goes back to what I was saying, that foreign blood is almost like, how like with slavery, they said that slaves were a third of a person. That's kind of what's currently going on. And, this is why I did that video on Saturday about like how I'm not fake like other people that, try to smile up in your face and pretend like they're your friends. If you go up to any of these people and you say, do you enjoy the fact that we kill people abroad? They'll say no, but then they'll still go out and vote for people who orchestrate or support killing people abroad. And so, it's basically, I say one thing and do the opposite. And unfortunately, because there's no penalty for voters and just like what they support and who they back, especially after they become aware of it, right? They just kind of go, oh, well, I vote for this person with that. Oh, well, too bad. They're able to just continue to have this ignorance that lets them, back people of that position. Again, no one voted for Trump for him, for Obama, any of these different people, so they could take a foreign government and basically say, yeah, please bend me over. Please stick your little thing up my backside and I'll do whatever you want. Yeah, it's okay. Because the Holocaust was so evil. Please stick me up the backside and let me do whatever you want. No one voted for that. But again, they were completely fine with doing this stuff because AIPAC gets them to support these positions. And anytime a politician, whether they're a Democrat or Republican, says the slightest thing that's not pro-Israel, here they come. Here comes the bootlickers for Israel. Here comes the people that follow the AIPAC code of absorbing Netanyahu's load. That's when they show up. So, I mean, we can go down. I'm not going to keep saying we can go down the list, but if you look at the older Bushes, I think he blocked the settlements of Israel loan guarantees, and it was a big issue because, oh my God, the Jews are going to vote for you in your re-election campaign. He was like, I don't care. So what? And you actually, I've been over this before. Despite my critiques of Obama, one of the things he did toward the very, very end of his tenure was back the UN Security Council that went against Israel, and he got a bunch of Republicans to lose their minds. But again, it's all based around not necessarily if the resolution was the truth or not, right? Like, look at the details of it. Just anytime it's anti-Israel, they go insane because they really want the U.S. government to just kind of like, everyone that is in it, turn your brain off and back whatever Israel says. And most of the presidents since the Netanyahu years have done that, unfortunately. And this is another one of those things where we were talking about how, because these governments are so finicky, if it's done under one person, it's not that bad. So, for example, when the U.S. was backing Israel, when they were, actually going for peace under the Yitzhak Rabin tenure, prior to his assassination, it wasn't a bad thing to just support Israel in that particular sense, because there was a serious attempt to say, hey, this crap's gone on for too long, we need to stop this. But since they've been in the hand of this right-wing Likud party, whether you're part of the supposed liberal Democrats over in the US or the right-wing Republicans, you have to just go, well, they're right-wing too, like our both parties over here, so let's back them. Yeah. And the TVs, purposely don't talk about this stuff because they know if you actually show any of it for more than like 5 seconds, it would be people would catch on pretty quickly to the scam. Mark says Israel is one of the most protected countries in the world. Yeah. And again, that protection comes at the behest of turning other countries, particularly Iran, into these Jesus Christ, I've seen them be talked about not by actual people, right? Not individuals that just that aren't in government, that don't follow this stuff. I've never seen them discuss Iran at all, but by politicians over here as this like horrible place that's just trying to. We remember Trump's national security advisor giving a speech, I believe it was the year before last year, saying he wanted regime change in Iran. Most people clapped like this without even knowing what the hell's going on over there. And one of the things they love to do again is try to tell you how horrible the place is. Oh my God, they have a dictatorship, they have a supreme leader. It's like, okay, but their person's been in power for 30 years, just like the person that is running Israel right now. And it's funny to watch them kind of sit there and try to really seem like the good guys, like they've convinced themselves that we're doing something that's right. That's why they got the whole reason for getting out of the Iran nuclear deal that Obama had, which again is probably my favorite thing he did in his whole tenure. But their whole reason for getting out of that is, hey, this makes it to where we can't just mess with Iran willy-nilly because they actually be complying with us. We need to make it to where we get out of this and we try to fearmonger, and so we can eventually invade them with the support of our BFF Israel and go over there and screw stuff up. Like, you're literally going to have American soldiers. It's most certainly in this current era, they're very susceptible to getting sent over to that country just because Netanyahu wants them to. So do you see how it's skewed to where people who were born and raised here, who never thought about Iran for 5 seconds, because they joined the U.S. military, are susceptible to being sent over there to a country that, again, has done nothing to them. And the only time they ever hear about it is when it gets mentioned on TV, like once a year or twice. And again, people have no problem with this stuff. They don't, it is what it is. People, they don't care, man. Mark says places like Palestine, Iraq, and Iran are always painted as an enemy of the state. There always has to be a boogeyman that the U.S. has to fight. That's Mark's comment. Yeah. But like I said, this goes down the list where when you start breaking down how stupid some of this stuff is, they kind of have to retort to, oh, you must be a supporter of it. Like when I was saying, let's get out, let's not invade Venezuela. Nobody, praises the Maduro government. Nobody said, hey, this is a great leader. No. But the point of saying that is, I wouldn't favor some foreign government, right? Let's pretend, what's a good country to throw out there? Let's say Syria, right? Let's say Bashar Assad says, okay, we're going to recognize Trump as the interim president, and we're going to recognize Hillary as the real president, right? I would have a problem with that. And that's not because I like Hillary more than Trump or, none of what I actually think of those two particular politicians. A foreign country should not be able to come into here and say, screw the election you had. You voted the wrong way. We pick your leader. And that's exactly what, they were doing in Venezuela, the U.S. So, that was why I didn't back that. And I had all these different people calling me a secret Maduro supporter. It's like, yeah, sure. I could have sworn Envoy wrote something, but I'm not getting it refreshed. This is weird. Well, let me load this page again. That's really strange. I'm not getting the comment on here. Wow, that's terrible. All right, let me get a little closer to the screen. Great comment. America loves a boogeyman. Nazis, Pearl Harbor, Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Desert Storm, etc., etc. Mark says U.S. trying to play God, bully tactics. Yeah, but that's kind of my thing, that we've allowed ourselves to have our tax dollars spent defending these places that do nothing for us. Like I believe the U.S. gave Israel, I think it was 3.7 billion for just like foreign aid. When do you ever see Israel giving us any money? Like that's my point, that this country has literally become almost like the welfare state of the world. But it's not like, so how they'll say within the context of American society, when someone gets on welfare, they're trying to cheat the system, and they're trying to make it to where anytime they do something, they can just rely on other people's dollars and their hard work, and just like this really demonic way of painting people who have issues, right? And there are people who do use the system in that way. But Israel literally is a proven version of that, where they're not like, they want to play this pity party. Woe is me. Oh, the Holocaust was so bad, and it was, but it had nothing to do with the Israeli government. But they stick that, and they go, oh, feel sorry for us forever as we have an apartheid state and treat Palestinians like subhumans. Oh, we're so it's so horrible. We didn't know that you guys wouldn't like that we kill people for no reason. That's literally what they've turned into. Mark says U.S. trying to. Oh, okay. Well, I already read that. Oh man. Hey, we're telling too much truth. Somebody disliked the stream because we're telling too much reality is hitting them in the face. They got pissed. They're like, dear diary, Justin won't stop talking about Israel. Man, these online snowflakes, dude. I just like there's so many people who watch this stuff and like have a hate boner. Like I remember we had the one guy who came on here on Monday for the Ron Paul stream, right? Where I did like 2 or 3 of his videos, and I was critiquing them. And like literally, they came in here and they start talking about the $1 trillion debt and all this stuff, and blah 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 blah. Right? I'm like, why are you here? Like, if you really think what's being said, it doesn't make sense and it's so wrong and incorrect, why are you here? That's a serious inquiry. I'm not trying to bait you with that question. Like I said, I only watch any of Trump's speeches because he's a person in a position of power. Along with Netanyahu, once these people get out of office and they make speeches and talk about stuff, I don't say anything about them. That's it, because they're not relevant anymore to a discussion. Just like with Shapiro and Levin, all these different conservative commentators, because they're not in office and they don't actually direct public policy, I don't give any of their remarks the time of day. I mean, it's just I don't understand that like weird hate boner. Like, you have people sub to people on YouTube just to, like, every time they upload, I'm gonna dislike you. And I told you, they always do it on a stream because that gets them attention. Because I disable the thing because I just don't have the patience anymore. But they love that, man. They get horny. They're like, oh yeah, look at me, I was the one guy who disliked it. Yeah. I'm glad you liked that video, Ruben. I had a feeling you would. Because I do like that channel of his when he's talking about foreign issues, because he does speak a lot of truth about our interventions. When he gets on the social stuff, I just want to like vomit. It's not basically, it's just like speaking in platitudes. And there's actually a really good segment that came out a while ago on it was on C-SPAN. These 2 commentators for, I think it was the National Review, and they were talking about nationalists, because I've said before, I don't like these different terms like socialist and all this different stuff, because in the modern era, people use it to smear other people, and they make it to where they've used it so much for all kinds of different ideologies or positions. People of varying views on things, that they don't have a meaning anymore. So in this segment, this person's like, oh yeah, well, this type of nationalism that was applied to I believe it was Germany, right? And then some other country. And I'm like, well, that's kind of my point. You literally made my point of, that's why you shouldn't use these stupid terms, because you're saying this kind of the way it was used here, this kind of way it was used here. But that means that the term is not as well defined as people would think it is, basically. So if I can find it, I'll try to post it on here. Like I said, I'm not a fan of, like taking a whole thing off of C-SPAN, but it was a nice little segment. I might maybe add some commentary over it if I can be assured that people want to see that, and that still depends largely on if they're interested. Because if they're not, I'm just gonna say, all right, well, screw it. It's really fun to kind of watch how people get all uptight over the U.S. interventions, and I try to say, well, you have to look at who else is going around there with them, because anytime it's fear mongering about Iran, it's usually Israel pushing at the floodgate, because they genuinely would rather we bomb there and have another forever war where none of the people at the top have to worry about having their lives lost than have a peaceful relationship with this country that, again, hasn't done anything to us. David says it's only been 500 years since the Brits came through and invaded this land we live on now. It's what the Americans are defending, the same enemy. That's why we have Britain, English, and America. Well, they've had. Oh, let me read the rest of this. David says now they are using America to invade other countries. Oh yeah, the U.S. That's my point. That the U.S. military is literally like the welfare military of Israel and Saudi Arabia. Think about it. You're these homegrown people from America, right? Who are told from an early age, wave to the flag, protected, yada yada yada. Go into these countries that aren't doing anything to the U.S. specifically, but because of these international relationships, they find themselves having to get stuck in these forever wars. Like, I guarantee you that people who went and served in Afghanistan when it started didn't think we'd be there for 18 years, as we currently are. I think it's 19 at this point. It's definitely inching toward the 19th year. But you get my point that you're lured there under false pretenses. All this stuff about unity and working together and all, just it doesn't matter. And that's why we have people like that person who came over here and disliked the thing, because reality is only good when it actually fits the belief system of the people who are in power. Like, oh yeah, we'll let you come and speak at the White House as you make the case for why our Middle East policy should be implemented. What's that? You hate it? Oh, don't come here. You're banished. Exit, withdraw. Because again, you saying that one thing, like, this is why rhetoric mattering more than actions is so stupid to me. Like, because you say something they don't like, they'll put more effort into trying to suppress that message than they will into stopping the policy that has proven itself detrimental and ineffective year after year. A lot of times, if you criticize U.S. involvement in Israel, you actually get a lot of people who say, "Oh, well, the generals say we should help them." It's like, yeah, but here's the thing: those are the same generals that said stay in Vietnam, same ones who said, go to Iraq the second time, not in the Gulf War. But the point is that that U.S. generals and U.S. top officials, as it pertains to getting involved in issues in other countries, historically, have been failures and fools. Call it what it is. And I don't say that to try and say that everybody who's in that position is stupid and whatnot, but they're not actively trying to do anything that means bringing a quick end to a conflict. Like, again, if Afghanistan ended 3 years in, I wouldn't say anything about it. But it shouldn't take a person's whole lifespan in some instances to get that stuff to be over. Unfortunately, you have people who have, again, convinced themselves, obey your overlord. Don't think critically about this stuff or any of these events, which again breeds the same kind of contempt that we've had on here, where it's just it's no critical thinking. That's why you've had Trump supporters who come to the channel, and when you talk about a particular position of Trump's that is relating to an international issue, which they have not shown themselves to be that adept at knowing, they bring up the economy and all these other social issues to deflect from your critique of a particular topic, because they have to convince themselves that whatever screw up he has internationally, oh no, it's okay because this thing over here is good. It's like, no, it's not. It's not. It's unrelated. It's they don't mix. Basically, is what I'm saying. But they try to. They have to tell themselves that, so it's okay. You see, David says, let me read his comment. Now they're using America. Oh, okay. You guys aren't saying anything. That's why I keep reading the same comment over and over and looking very foolish. By the way, on Saturday, if I can, not be busy that day, I'll try to do a stream on this thing this person did that pissed me off, because it's like really stupid that I have to do certain things to get people to pay attention to issues and whatnot. I guess we're pretty much done here. Maybe if anyone has anything else to say, I just want to explain what the problem was with the U.S.-Israel relationship, and kind of articulate that if I could. Ruben says he'll work until 5 on Saturday. Well, you could always watch it after it's done. Mark says America is the greatest country in the world. LOL. It's the greatest country at bootlicking for Israel, definitely. Like all these different presidential candidates try to. I mean, like the fact that I watched the Democrats, the one that are running for president, their response to Ilhan Omar's comments, right? And you had one of them. You had like I think it was Booker and Gillibrand who said that her comments were disturbing. And I was like, what a bunch of snowflakes. You guys are really upset that she said money influences a position in the U.S., a country with a literal oligarchy? No, like, but that's what I'm saying, that people are more upset over rhetoric than what people are actually doing. Like, I don't get too mad when I get the dislike stuff on here. I just like think it's stupid because again, they do it during the streams to get attention. But I don't get upset because even if I think they're disliking is just to be douchebags, and it's annoying because when you have somewhere only a few people are watching, you feel like you're, I guess, safe from the rebukes or whatnot. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things because they can dislike my stuff 1,000 times and it will never come close to having the impact on me that the US in its cock sucking for Israel has had on the rest of the world and all the people that have been murdered as a result of it. So they can enjoy their computer fight. All right, so thank you for watching. I appreciate it. And again, Israel is a complicated place. It's another one of those places where the people who live there are okay, good, because we have individuals in that country that oppose the Likud party and the way the Palestinians are treated. So it's just like the U.S. in that respect, where the people who live there to an extent, because there are supporters of that party there as well, are okay. But they're not in charge, so we have a terrible government. It's like literally the complete thing of here, where individuals have to save it. And I said before, I personally think the only way you're ever going to get okay, she's not lying though. People do strange things for money. Got to eat right. David was over. I don't get what the eat right part is. But what I was saying is that it's another one of those places where its current leadership is terrible. But if to give you any kind of hope or optimism, it could, like, Netanyahu's going to be gone at some point eventually. The only problem is determining if the person who comes after him is as horrible or not. Just like with Trump over here. People who criticize him, I said, look, he's going to be gone at some point, but those particular policies and positions are what you should be pissed about. He's just an arbiter for a terrible ideology that got somebody who, to his credit, was funny and seemed to be charismatic to some people to get in office and do them. So it's it's not about the person, it's about the positions. The positions are going to outlive the person, for a long time. So we have to see whether whoever comes after Netanyahu is any better. See, Mark says, "Where did you find your ending to your vids?" Well, that's the one from this guy, this commentator on here that has that kind of personality, like like getting upset in that manner. That's how that was his ending. Like he had somebody in his comment section who wrote something stupid, and that was his response to them. So I really liked it, so I cut it out and then play it because I thought it was funny. Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's where that comes from. So in conclusion, I don't support the Israeli government. I support uh, Israeli civilians who are opposed to the Likud party and actually want to treat the Palestinians like human beings. Because that's, I think, the humanitarian thing to do. And if you don't like it, you are more than welcome to to definitely, just go and do this.
Suck a dick, go fuck yourself, fuck your mama, fuck your daddy, fuck your whole generation, go jump off a bridge, go buy you a ticket, fly to Japan, and lick that old bitch's pussy. If it means that much to you, faggot, shut the fuck up. No one cares.
Have a good day.